Okay, and so I want to talk a little bit about Pascal. You know that cutting-edge computer program from the 80s? No. Blaise Pascal, okay? He lived in the 17th century. He's a French mathematician, physicist, inventor, writer, and Christian philosopher. Pascal was an incredible individual. If you notice there, he didn't even live 40 years. He was 39 years old when he died. He was one of the first inventors of a mechanical calculator in the 17th century. I think he did that by the time he was 16 or 20, somewhere in there. In 1654, he corresponded with a French mathematician, I believe it's Fermat, on the subject of probabilities. And really from that collaboration came and was born the entire mathematical theory of probabilities. It's this idea of probabilities to come up with what's called Pascal's wager, okay? Now, what Pascal said is that this wager offers a pragmatic reason for believing in God. That even under the assumption that God's existence is unlikely, the potential benefits of believing are so vast that it makes having faith in God makes sense. It's rational. Now, I'll tell you right now, there's been a lot of people argue against Pascal's wager in that context and against it generally. And I would also probably say from my perspective, I think maybe his claim is a little too strong. I don't know if you can get from probabilities to belief in God, but I think it definitely offers a pragmatic reason for investigating the truth of Christ. Why? Because the stakes are just too high. And that's exactly what Pascal's wager talks about. Now, I'm not going to get into a big math class. I couldn't explain probability to you if I wanted to, okay? But I am going to talk a little bit about, on a very first floor level, about what it is. There's basically two options that lead four possible outcomes, okay? There's belief in God is one option. And you can either, yes, I believe in God, or no, I don't believe in God. Based on that, there are two possible outcomes. There are two other correlating factors of the existence of God. Either yes, he does exist, or no, he doesn't exist, okay? So that makes four options. I can believe in God, and he does exist. I can believe in God, and he doesn't exist. I cannot believe in God, and he does exist. Or I can not believe in God, and he doesn't exist. Now, again, I don't want to be too complicated. I think that's pretty straightforward, that there's basically four things about our belief in God. It's either true or it isn't. We either believe or we don't. Now, if I believe in God and he doesn't exist, it's not really a tremendous swing one way or the other. I probably live a pretty good life, okay? As a Christian, I'm a moral person. I try and do what's right. I probably have a good life. Not really any tremendous plus or minus there. If I don't believe in God and he doesn't exist, well, I don't know. Some people would argue they probably lived a better life. They had a lot of fun and whatnot, but I've known a lot of people, including myself, when I lived a life when I didn't act like I believed God existed, and you know what? There were some terrible consequences from that. So maybe it isn't all that it's cracked up to be, but again, these two options, if God doesn't exist, could go either way. There's plenty of room for argument and discussion about who'd live the better life or what their life would be like. It doesn't really matter, though, because when you're dead, right? If this is true. Here's where it gets a little tricky, though. Here's where it begins to matter. Because if God does exist, and I believe in him, then I get to go to heaven according to the Christian faith, right? Now, and again, whatever you think in your mind may or may not be what heaven is, but it's obviously the best possible outcome of existence, at least, again, as the Christian faith defines it, okay? So in this option, heaven, I have the option of the greatest possible outcome in existence there possibly could be. What about the other side of the equation? If I choose not to believe in God and he does exist, I have the complete opposite. I have the worst possible outcome, the worst possible existence, and according to Scripture, that lasts forever. puts the stakes in a little bit different perspective, doesn't it? So the question is, are these stakes worth the risk of being wrong? All because you wouldn't look at it? All because you wouldn't examine the evidence? Now, somebody that makes an intelligent decision to take that risk and make that decision and has looked at all the evidence, different situation. But the question is it worth looking at? Do those two options make it worth examining the evidence and making an intelligent decision about whether to believe in God or not? I think that the answer to that should be very evident, because you have the two most stark contrasts of outcomes that you could possibly have. The best, most wonderful, any positive words you can use to describe it on one hand for eternity, and the complete negative outcome, all the worst words you could ever think of to describe it on the other hand. So that's what we want to talk about a little bit today.